got Michael S., Ray and Sandy, Kevin Durica, Lori Keller, and Grumpy's Laid Back Carvings.
Hey guys, you're just seeing the tail end of this process. I've been working for a good long while to get that log out of the pile and get it over here. And honestly, it's just a brute beast, so I don't even know if my little old tractor is going to lift it up. We're going to find out here in just about three shakes of a lamb's tail. Casey loves it when I say that. But some of the tribe requested a Bigfoot carving, so that's what I'm trying to do. If we can't get the log stood up, we're going to revert to Plan B. I'm not sure what that is yet, but that's what's going on.
Hello Tudor, hello Curtis. We are actually located in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And it is a very big log, Michael. Isn't he amazing, everyone? You're awesome. You did great.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I'll try to have those stood up before I start.
No, I think that was exciting for them. There's Bear, there's Suzanne.
God, you guys are excited. I was scared.
There's Runic, Joe, Billy Munso, Dad.
Alright, so everybody, Bear asked in his live stream the other day what I was carving, and I made the mistake of saying any requests. And all of a sudden Bigfoot pops up. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Bigfoot. So it looks like we're doing a Bigfoot. And that's what I guess this is all about here. So I'm going to set up some staging and we'll try and get busy.
Electric whittler.
Electric! I don't know if one sound will be enough. It's just a little beauty of a beast, isn't it?
Oh, she just said, I bet Bigfoot will be a huge seller. We actually just had somebody come in and ask for a Bigfoot.
Again?
I said we just had somebody come in and ask for a Bigfoot carving.
Wow.
Michael says he's saving up for Bigfoot.
Oh yeah. Told him to save up for Kubota. Is that thing tough as nails or what? To have this all set up, but it was a bigger chore to get that log out of the pile than I thought it would be. And we wanted to start the live stream at 2:30, and I was still working on the log, and we looked at the clock. It was like quarter to 3, so we figured we just would show you guys setting up the log.
How big around is that log, Michael asks?
You know, it's a crotch piece. So it went up, that was the trunk, and then it went up into 2 big branches. So at the base, on the bottom, it's at least 3 feet, maybe a little bit more. If you look at the beginning of the video, I spanned my 3-foot bar on the chainsaw across the butt of it. I don't know how many of you are here right from the start, but it was a little longer than my bar. And so I'm saying up there, man, that's 4 feet, 5 feet, something like that. We could measure it, but it's just that's as big as logs get around here.
Michael S. says happy birthday to EW and his wife.
Happy birthday. It's Electric's birthday? And his wife.
So wait, yeah, so it's Electric and Electric Whittler's wife's birthday?
So, I don't sing very well, but Casey has a beautiful voice.
No.
So if somebody's going to sing happy birthday, it'll have to be her.
I'm singing it in my head.
Does anybody know how old Electric is? I think that's fair game. I'm not supposed to ask girls, but...
Hi, Possum. Possum is here.
Hey, Possum.
Billy Munso, he is carving Bigfoot.
Well, we're going to be trying... I've never carved a Bigfoot, so it'll be slow going, I think. It's, you know, you guys asked for Bigfoot, just be prepared for, it's not, at least I don't think it's going to zip right out. It's probably going to be a multi-week event. So.
Cat's Piece is here.
Who?
Cat's Piece.
Cat, welcome in. Again, apologies, we're really behind the so many things going on today, and that log was, you know, I'm just not set up right just yet. I am going to switch that barrel, so very back.
Yep. Thank you, Kat. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I can go grab it.
Sorry, I got the screws.
If it's not in that drawer that it usually is, then.
You know, sometimes you know. Sometimes you know things. Secret powers, finding skills.
I could probably play Happy Birthday on the piano, yes.
I say we do it. Let's do it. Yes, come on. She's shaking her head. really didn't think we were trying to get that log stood up. And I was so close to throwing in the towel, I really didn't think it was going to happen. But squeaked it up.
Rhinestone Suzanne said, I got the sticker today. I'm making a sticker board so I can display them all.
All right.
Yay.
Appreciate you being a member of the channel.
Yeah.
And we sent one to Perry Lowe Jr. also, another awesome member of the channel. Just a lot of great people that support us, and we do appreciate it. And we know the sticker isn't, you know, something to celebrate and have a party. And it's not exactly like hitting the lottery, but it's a little token of, you know, just appreciation. And we really do appreciate this.
We have Matthew here.
Hey, Matthew.
And we have Ariel HD Multimedia.
Ariel, welcome in, buddy. Is the mountain over here?
There he is. Yep, it's over on the little stand.
I feel like I'm all wore out. I haven't even started.
Suzanne says, I'll send you and Bear a sticker now that I have your addresses.
I appreciate it. We're working on a sticker thing too. And we want to display them, and we're kind of torn. We don't know if we're going to grab like a piece of plexiglass or if we're going to urethane up a piece of wood, a nice sanded finished piece of wood, and stick them to that. But I want something I can bring outside and like show off and show the stickers off. We like to shout out everybody's channels and stuff, so it'd just be really cool to be able to pin onto a sticker board once in a while. And but we're having fun YouTubing, we're loving it. We received a package from Aiden Fletcher, Night Owl, and very cool. We got something from Tucker and I up in Newfoundland, so we're working on a video right now to like an unboxing and packaging kind of a video. And yeah, I think that's we're good to go.
Do you want your water?
I am going to grab some water before I start.
Okay.
Once I get started carving, could you set them on the stand and then go in and get my study material on my phone?
Yep.
Don't laugh at me, guys. I'm doing a kind of a, you know, when I'm carving, I like to look at my own myself. I like to look at like poses and stuff like this. So you're going to see the carving start to emerge, but you're also going to see me like posing. I think Bigfoot's going to be making a muscle, you know what I mean? So if you see me up there acting weird, I'm not, you know, I'm not smoking anything funny. I really don't do that stuff. I don't laugh too much either. So. wire brush.
have Baby Kisses.
Hey, Baby Kisses.
Jeff.
Jeff.
No, there's more. Tucker and I. Aiden, Night Owl.
Hey, Aiden. Tucker and I and Aiden, those are two good people right there. We received a mail call from both of you guys, and we opened it, we filmed it, we're currently working on the video. Hoping to have it out Monday, but if it's a day or two later, sometimes that editing takes a little longer than we anticipate, but it's definitely on the way. We appreciate you guys. Both of those guys sent us an awesome mail call, so thank you very much. And man, the sun goes behind the clouds and it just gets a little chilly here in New Hampshire. So.
Oh, I know Greg Davis was in there, and I saw Greg Marshall as well.
Greg Marshall is in there?
Yeah, or he was. I don't know if he still is.
Yeah, if you guys see Greg Marshall or if he's in there, give him a warm welcome. He started out as a customer, I'm going to say over 20 years ago. And I just got to be real good friends with him and his wife, Tanya. And they're down in Massachusetts, so we get together for barbecues and this kind of thing off and on. And good people, so be real friendly, make them feel welcome in there.
How tall is this piece of wood?
We're starting out with an 8-foot piece.
And Rick Smith is here.
Welcome, Rick. Glad you joined us. It's definitely slow going. I'm feeling my way through this. I think once I get the head and that top arm established, probably the rest of it should come out a little quicker. Not to mention I'll be down on ground level. But, yeah, you can see the top of the fist. Mark tries to carve in there?
No, I've not seen Mark. Thank you, Michael S. Baby Kisses says, looks good so far.
Thank you, Baby Kisses. This is it's a massive piece of wood, and it's going to take up a lot of time, so I'm really trying to take my time and get this thing established right. I actually have to try and sell this thing afterwards, so. Give me a run and just grab a little bit of ground for you.
Okay.
Chainsaws are nice and sharp. And seems like it's been a real good minute since I've hit any metal in my trees. And we get a lot of trees that are seconds, or they end up in a landscape yard because the mill wouldn't take them. The mills have metal detectors a lot, so if there's even one nail in that tree somewhere, they'll reject, the mill will reject it. And some of the smaller mills will go around with a metal detector and try and find it and get it out maybe. Sometimes it's inside the wood so they can't get it out. But most of the bigger mills don't mess around with that. They just kick them off to the side. And so I get typically a lot of trees with like metal and old barbed wire fence. We found bullets, but the worst tree I ever had was when I was a younger guy. And I don't think I would tackle it today, but I swear it must have been a tree house built by a kid. It was so just full of nails. Now that I'm talking about that, I better knock on some wood. But just been really blessed lately, not too much metal.
Why don't I go get the gas and I'll reverse this and you can read.
All right.
Elements and interact. Oops. Nope, that was right the first time. There.
Grumpy's laid back carving. I don't think you'll have a problem selling. Thank you, Grumpy. I try not to be too overconfident. I try to err on the side of. It seems like whenever, hopefully, I've learned a lot of those hard lessons as a younger guy. Get cocky, and the next thing you know, you just make a fool of yourself. And so I'm still saying, hopefully, it's going to come out real nice. But thank you, Grumpy. It's very kind of you. What do we got here, as Bear would say? What do we got here? Heck yeah, look at that guy. Just measure twice, cut once is not the rule of the thumb, right? I don't know. I don't do much measuring. I do a lot of cutting, and usually things work out in the end. But again, try and stay humble. That way there, when I do screw up, I don't look like too much of a buffoon. I look like that enough as it is. You looked great trying to get semi to honk there. I didn't even think of that. If Trucker Kevin's in there, he'd appreciate that. Baby Kisses said that Bigfoot's going to be trying to get the truckers to honk, I think. You could top that gas off right there if you wanted.
Did you give me the cap? Oh no, you have the cap.
You don't seem to that kind of attitude. You seem rather humble. I try to be, Grumpy. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when I was a younger guy, and I think a lot of artists go through what I call Michelangelo syndrome. artists and woodworkers and that kind of stuff. And people tell them their work is so good, it's so wonderful, it's you're this, and next thing you know, the head gets bigger and bigger. And so I went through that as a younger guy, and so I haven't always been so humble. And I will lost some tan. What's that mean, Bear?
You're looking less Cuban.
Yeah, less Cuban. We love Cubans. Gustavo is out there somewhere, man. He invited us to his house for dinner. Didn't even know us. Saw that guy. Yeah, that's another story for another day. But yeah, being humble, I think, goes along with serving the Lord too. And those that are least in the kingdom are supposed to be greater. There's a lot of scriptures that kind of, I'm not good at speaking those things, but you guys know what I'm saying. So definitely try and be humble. And I've always found that if I'm not, I'm going to get caught somewhere. Somebody's going to take me down a peg. So sorry guys, every live I get a phone call. It's all right, Aiden.
Road is busy today.
Bear's eye must have sawdust in them. Yeah, I wasn't surprised. Tucker and I, amen. Right on. Check out Gary, Tucker and I. Awesome channel up in Newfoundland. Lots of adventure and that kind of stuff. And really everybody in here. Grumpy's Laid Back Carvings, West Country Mudlarks. Hey, West Country, welcome in, buddy. And Bear and the Boss Lady, Night Owl. All these people have channels, and highly recommend you support them. And hey, hit the like button too. I don't know if people are just coming in and stuff like that, but if you haven't thought to hit the like button, we appreciate that. Helps us out. And it looks like my chainsaws are gassed up. I'm gonna get some mountain water and we're gonna get back to work.
It is 4:25.
Day's still young.
Yep. Kelly McKinley Music and Models here.
Who is it?
Kelly McKinley Music.
Hey, Kelly McKinley.
And we
Thanks for
have
joining us.
SMWC Poker.
SMWC Poker. There's a guy with a cool channel making bag chips out of found wood and scrap wood, and pretty cool stuff. Definitely check out his channel. He's got a cool take on things, and he's actually turning it into a little hustle. So pretty cool stuff. Oh, we're just getting ready. We're gonna catch my breath here, but we're gonna knock the staging down a level and see if we can bring it down. And so it's progress.
It is 4:52.
We'll get the staging down a little. We'll work a little bit more, and then we'll have our talk like we do most days at the end. While I'm breaking down the staging, would you mind hooking me up with some more mountain water?
Sure.
So we're getting ready for spring cleaning. Once all the snow's gone and sawdust is thawed out, we have to clean up the yard. So one of my least favorite chores of the year. Sawdust builds up for a better part of the winter, and I get to put it on my trailer here with the tractor, but at the dump it's a lot of shoveling off the trailer. So yeah, it's almost time for spring cleanup.
We have, I don't know how to say it, A-Tube Aesthetics would like to know what you are sculpting.
So this is a Bigfoot. We have a whole community of artists, sculptors, wood carvers, woodworkers that hang out on these live streams. And just a lot of awesome people. And they've been requesting a Bigfoot, so I'm finally, I guess, tackling that project. And, yeah, go back and watch the start of the live stream too. We talk a lot about the project, and you can actually see the log get stood up too. That was a pretty good ordeal. Did I burn through that tank fast?
Got my honey's handmade here.
Hey, honey. I always feel weird saying that guy's name. I think his name's Steve, right?
Yes.
Right on. Hey, Steve. Yes, kid, and Steve's an awesome channel. Check him out. He's a talented woodworker. Man, what time is it, Keith?
It is 5:08.
Oh, wait. So, how long have we been up?
About 2.5 hours.
Alright, so that's a good place. I'm happy with the progress. Definitely got to start on having it roughed out. It's going to be a lot more thinned down and refined. But I think I found a little direction, and I think next week it's actually things are going to unfold a little bit quicker now that I kind of have that solid start in place. With that being said, we'll move on to our end of the day talk. Let me just grab some mountain water. I forgot to do the disclaimer. Chainsaws, power tools are dangerous. Working with logs and stuff of this nature on staging is very dangerous. I don't recommend that you do that at home at all. Chainsaws aren't just dangerous, but carving with them is the most dangerous way that you can use them. So we joke about it a lot of times, but in all seriousness, it is and can be very dangerous. So please don't do this at home. And I hope I'm not getting in over my head on this one. This is a little brainy for me. I'm not the, we're gonna give it a go anyways. So today's verse: for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God, for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. So I wanted to talk a little bit about bringing every thought into captivity, and what exactly does that mean? You know what I'm saying? We hear that a lot, and I've heard it talked about a lot, and not always explained, like, how do you go through this process? So I think for me, and Casey actually was real integral in bringing this to light, but when you have a bad thought, a violent thought, or any other kind of thought that you're trying to get away from, literally say, we all know that there's power in the name of Christ. And literally, as soon as you have the thought, just stop and say, I repent, I pray for forgiveness, and I thank you, Lord God, that I have the mind of Christ. And it seems like, I guess I was at a point in my Christian walk where I thought I was doing pretty well. And then when I started to implement that, I realized, like, every 10 seconds I was stopping, and it was almost going through my day, a jumbled mess of stopping and off balance and constantly trying to deal with these thoughts. And I began to realize how many negative thoughts I actually had. So literally take every thought captive. And I almost thought I was going a little batty at first when I first started doing this, because my thoughts were interrupted so often. And we go to a church now where the minister, the pastor there, is probably, and again, I won't compliment people if I'm not serious. I'll always just won't say anything at all. It's kind of like Casey's cooking. I always talk about how good it is, and I like to say, if that wasn't true, I just probably wouldn't say anything at all. And in all honesty, that is my philosophy. But when you get to hear somebody that's like a next level kind of smart, there's just something different, and I've not known very many of those people. So I do think he is one of the smartest people I know. And he's talking about rewiring your brain, and use all kinds of medical terms that I'm not even going to try and get into, or But basically what he said is when you learn a behavior, that your mind literally creates some sort of a channel through the network of nerves and whatever little things go through there in your mind. It literally creates a channel that you revert back to that constantly. So if you want to change, you literally have to rewire your mind. If you want to change your behavior, and so there's so many things in life that applies to or pertains to people that struggle and can't get out of whatever their struggle is. Maybe it's an addiction, or maybe it's I guess I'll be vulnerable and say one of the things that I'm trying to work on now and deal with is dealing with offense. The Bible tells us not to be offended, and so when we become offended, and honestly, that's great advice. That's good for families and all kinds of things, that if people just wouldn't get offended about every little thing. And at any rate, that's kind of the talk for today. I guess, how does somebody like me that was literally a ruffian and grew up as a ruffian, and people tell me now that I seem to have a gentle nature, and that's definitely God at work in my life. So through constantly, there's another thing is people say, how does God work in your life? How do you know God is real? And so, for example, when I started dealing with these negative thoughts and this kind of stuff, with Casey coaching me on this, about that same time, our minister just happened to start talking about rewiring your brain. And so you go through these series of things, and I literally believe that coming from a background of being rough, and I'm still a little rough around the edges. Like, I'm not definitely not a ruffian like I was. Looking back, I can't even believe that I was that person. But still a little rough around the edges, and but not a ruffian. So how do you go from going to prison and being that kind of a person to having a gentle nature? And not a lot of people know my whole story and everything I went through, but people a lot of times will end up in addiction. They'll end up with suicide. They'll end up basically in all kinds of horrible places. And the only way to walk through what I've walked through is by the power of God and the grace of God, and to come out and actually have a gentle nature. And so that's how you can kind of look back. And I feel like he was preparing me for this kind of a thing, for talking to people on YouTube that are trying to deal with issues and stuff of this nature, or that may have come from a similar background as me. And so when you look back and you see his hand at work in your life, and there's just too many things that line up for too many coincidences, that is definitely one of the ways that God is real. So people talk about the Big Bang Theory and everything exploded from gases, and there's a mathematical formula that they can prove it. I think it's a bunch of arrogance. I think they have to admit that there's something they can't explain. Nothing just comes from nothing. And likewise, we can't explain God. There's a great mystery there. And what you can do is see God at work in your life, and you can see the evidence. And so that's one of many, many ways. And so I think that hopefully that came across clear. I'm generally not a well-spoken kind of a person, but hopefully that kind of conveys what I was trying to say. And we're going to leave you guys with that. And we'll see you next time. I think Wednesday this Bigfoot's really going to start to come out. So definitely join us. Looking forward to it.